Energy and Environment Commission. Welcome to our February meeting. Just as we get started I'll let you know that we are recording this. I think for commissioners, we have the option of deciding whether we want to actually share the recording or not on YouTube. The county is allowing commissions to choose. So if there's actually any objections, you want to kind of raise that now.
Feel free to use the chat as well. We're checking both.
Yeah. Okay, so not hearing otherwise, I'm going to say people are comfortable with sharing this on YouTube. So we're going to start out with some introductions and welcomes. And first I want to actually acknowledge that we have several commissioners who will be going off the commission at the end of this month, starting with John Bloom, who has reached his term limit. Several other commissioners have decided to not re-up after their terms are ending, and Tim Effio has recently resigned. So we'll also, Sean Norton, Josh Grisette, Gilbert Campbell will be leaving us. We appreciate all the service that they've committed to being on the commission. And we will have Doug Snoyenbos and Rob Sandoli were just appointed to be commissioners. And so their terms will start at the 1st of next month. So with that, I would, we'll go around and have everybody introduce themselves. I'll start with the commissioners. Again, I'm Joan McIntyre, Chair of the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. And I'll just kind of work down my list of who's here. Let's see, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Eric Gibbs, Commissioner.
John.
John Bloom, Commissioner for tonight.
Yes. Kevin Vincent.
Hi, I'm Kevin Vincent, and I'm a member of C2E2.
Majdi.
Good evening, Majdi Shamali, Commission member as well.
Okay, Mark Greenwood.
Mark Greenwood, and I'm a commissioner. Hello.
Okay. Michaela.
Michaela Milton, Commissioner.
Jonathan.
Sorry, Jonathan Morgenstein, Commissioner. And if this is John Bloom's last meeting, it's been amazing having you as mentor and just someone to have on this and the Energy Committee. So
I feel like we should have cookies or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of hard to do on a virtual.
Yeah.
I'll just go down the list, maybe starting with Rebecca, and then I'll kind of move back up from mine.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Rebecca, I'm the staff liaison to the commission.
Okay. Oh, Stephen, I missed you.
Hi, I'm Stephen DeLessio, Commissioner.
Okay. And Rob Sandoli, if you want to just briefly introduce yourself. Look forward to working with you. You're muted.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Rob Sandoli. I think I met some of you at the last meeting when I sat in, and I'm really excited to join this group. I've been in Arlington since the mid-90s, and I've been a federal employee working in the clean energy space for 20 plus years, and so really excited to join this commission.
Okay. And, and I skipped over Stephen. Or did I?
I think you.
Okay.
I think you might have gotten him.
Oh, did I? Yeah. Okay.
No
all right. I'll just gonna work my list, and if you're here as a public and going to make a public statement, if you will let me know. I know we have several that are planning on making public statements. But Terry.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. Tanner Prime.
Hello, everyone. I'm just here as a watcher, as a listener.
Okay, well, welcome. Ryan Jones.
Also just here to listen. Thank you.
Right. Ruth?
Yes, I'm here to listen also.
Pierre Holloman.
Pierre Holloman, Assistant Transit Chief.
Okay, welcome. We're looking forward to your presentation. Paul Monnier.
Good evening. My name is Paul Mounier. I'm the Senior Service Planner for the ART system.
Great. Matthias.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. First time listener here.
Okay, welcome. Mary.
Mary Glass.
And Maria Green.
Hi, I'm just here to listen.
Lynn Rivers.
Good evening, Lynn Rivers, Transit Bureau Chief.
Great. Hui Wang.
Hi, good evening, Hui Wang, DOT Director.
Great, welcome. Fred Phillips.
Yeah, hi, I'm Fred Phillips. I'm just here to listen. I'm actually potentially interested in filling a vacancy when one should arise, or if one has already arisen. But
right.
Mostly I'm just interested in listening in. Thank you.
Great, welcome. Doug, and welcome as the new commissioner starting next month.
Hi, I'm Doug Snellenboss. I've been on the Energy Committee for a couple of years, and I'm going to be joining C2E2 soon. I'm happy about that. Thank you.
Yes. Demetra?
Demetra McBride, Bureau Chief, the county's Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management.
Great. David Evans?
Hi, that's me. I'm David Evans. I'm just here to listen tonight, and I'm a master naturalist, and so very interested in this commission's work.
Great. Clinton Edwards? Charles Moore?
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm here, first time listener, and also potentially interested in joining the commission should a vacancy occur.
Great. And Ann Bodine? Bodine?
Hi, my name is Ann Bodine. I'm a resident of Lion Park and a tree hugger, and hope to make public comments if you're
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we'll just do that right now. We'll turn to public comment, maybe starting with Ann. And I assume it's Ann and Mary. And is Terry going to make comments as well?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so why don't we start with Ann?
Okay, hi. As I said, my name is Ann Bodine. Arlington last March had a surplus of 1,600 housing units at the price points equal to what Missy Middle will provide, and a deficit for 9,000 for those earning under 50% of area median income. Even before eightplexes came off the table with Missy Middle, lowest price points for new units were above the median household income of Arlington's Blacks, Hispanics, and seniors. I strongly disagree with those saying Missy Middle will help current residents of color, and I ask C2E2 to support a reporting requirement for the board to track the ethnic and socioeconomic diversity of EHO residents over 5 and 10 years if it adopts new zoning. I ask you to oppose the option to allow EHO on lots over 1 acre by special exception. These could become parks, stormwater drains, or truly affordable housing. I ask you to oppose the bonus lot coverage for unbuilt detached garages as another giveaway to developers and loss for our green space. I ask you to oppose ADUs for EHO as this will further reduce tree canopy requirements. I ask you to read pages 43 to 52 of the report I sent from Arlingtonians for Our Sustainable Future. That report notes that Missy Middle will complicate or put out of reach key county goals. Missy Middle reduces tree canopy to only 10% on 97% of land being rezoned, killing our goal of 40% canopy. It adds 480,000 cubic feet per year of runoff, harming goals to protect watersheds and reduce flood threats. You maybe saw an article today the county is going to start buying land for runoff containment. That's an alarm bell. It incentivizes inefficient construction that adds to energy consumption, complicating the effort to reach carbon neutrality. It adds to the carbon footprint with more people, and it is less energy efficient than continuing to build out corridors or converting older vacant commercial or hotel space. Finally, I ask you to support a compromise idea of duplexes countywide that I sent, maxing out with 3 plexes near transit. If this Minneapolis scale effort of Missing Middle works out, the board can come back and refine or expand it. We cannot go back from 6 plexes, and there is too much at stake to do that sense of expanse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary? Mary Glass, can you hear us?
We can see you.
Maybe put something in the chat.
Yeah, and we'll turn, Terry, we'll turn to her and we'll try to get back to Mary.
Well, hi there. How are you?
Good evening.
I've testified in front of the commission before. It's been a while, and a couple of times we had great success. We had success when we were fighting the very badly planned Washington Boulevard bike trail that was going to literally destroy all of the trees alongside Washington Boulevard that kept the pollution and noise from directly affecting the low-income residents that lived adjacent. This time, I think we're on a wrong path, and unfortunately, because you're one of my favorite commissions, we're on opposite sides here. Nobody at this point can literally deny that putting missing middle housing in place in Arlington County is a death sentence for our trees, period. There is no recovering from that. It is not fair to ask the residents here that live in Arlington to suffer the noise, the pollution, the loss of trees, and the loss of wildlife, and kids get sick from asthma. It's already absolutely proven that when there's excess amounts of air pollution, people's health directly suffer. And that is what the county board has in store for us. I do not feel that we should be made to suffer the worst of this because we think that we're saving, because that is not true. If anybody drives at all down 95 or out 66, you know that the developers have been out there destroying everything for years. The big ones, Toll Brothers, Horton, Havanian, they're all destroying everything. So why should we endorse this? We shouldn't. You shouldn't. It's the wrong thing to do. It's not going to help anybody, but it is going to hurt every single citizen that lives in Arlington County. There is no upside to this environmentally at all. In addition to all that, environmentally sound. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary?
Joan?
Yes.
I was wondering if I can ask a question. I don't know if that's in procedure. I agree with a lot of what's been said, but a question that I keep having is, my understanding is that under the missing middle plan, there is no change to the footprint of what is permitted. So if currently a plot is permitted to have, I'm just throwing out there a number, a 1,000 square foot footprint, then that same size plot would also only be allowed to have a 1,000 square foot footprint for whatever's built on there.
Are you asking me, sir?
I'm asking.
Yeah,
I guess
Jonathan, I think we can maybe take this up later.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think you're correct on the footprint.
Well, I would like to answer his question if I could later on, if you could just remember.
Well, we don't. Yeah, no, public comment is just at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, Joan, say this, that most of the homes that are built are not built out to the maximum square footage, and that includes McMansions. And the ones in my neighborhood, there's 3 nearby, none of them have gone to the maximum amount of lot coverage. And in fact, one of them didn't touch one tree, not even a branch came down. And the other one put 11.
Okay, I think you've had enough time. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's enough clarification.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mary Glass is next.
Okay, Mary Glass, have we got her back now?
I saw her earlier.
Okay, I think she was frozen and then she looked like she had dropped off. You want to check in the waiting room and see if she's come back in?
I don't see her, unfortunately. I will distribute her slides momentarily.
Okay.
Via email.
All right. Okay, so our next agenda item is to approve our minutes from January. Everybody had a chance to look at those?
Let me pull them up 1 second.
Joan, I have a change that I suggest.
Okay.
If you scroll down to the summary of the questions on the electrification plan, let me see, take my glasses off here. The question, it says here that the commissioners requested basic route block analysis about the 2-to-1 bus replacement. We also expressed somewhere very clearly that we not only wanted additional analysis, but we just thought 2-to-1 replacement was wrong. And I didn't see that reflected in the minutes. So I think it's not just we want backup for it, but we believe it's inaccurate. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. I'll massage that.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And it looks like Mary Glass is back, so we can go turn to her for her public comment. Mary?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my computer. It had some kind of problem. I had to reboot. I'm just trying to get it open.
Okay.
Mary, would you like me to show your slides?
That would be great too, however you want to do it.
Okay, great. All right, 3 minutes will begin now.
Are the slides up? I can't see them.
Yes.
Yes, they're up.
Ah, there we go. Okay. Thank you. I'm Mary Glass, and you may remember at your December meeting that I spoke about a new tree canopy assessment that was being prepared using private citizens funding. Can you go to the second slide? This research has been completed and the preliminary overview results were presented in a public webinar February 13th. The study was conducted by the nationally recognized Green Infrastructure Center. They used accepted standard NAEP data from 2021, but unlike previous studies, it was augmented with LiDAR remote sensing, which further distinguishes the vegetation heights. From their analysis, maps were created to show our current forest assets and opportunities to expand the public services they provide. Experts emphasize that these maps are critical to establishing realistic goals in a forestry plan. Next slide. So the key things you want to know, key takeaways, the existing tree canopy is 33%, not the 41% stated in the 2017 study. And unfortunately, impervious surfaces are 40%, so much more than the tree canopy. But there is also low vegetation, 5%, and pervious surface, things like grass, 22%. And we all know that the amount of the tree canopy really impacts how much heat, energy, air quality, and climate change issues we have to face. So preservation is urgent, and the existing resource is so much smaller than recognized that we really need to go back and rethink the new Forestry and Natural Resources Plan so it reflects the realities that have been exposed by this information. Further, the county should redirect the $150,000 that they have planned for another canopy study, which would duplicate this, and instead use it for the public tree inventory, maintenance, planting, and other priorities that have already been identified by the FNRC. Okay, slide four. Okay, the tree canopy data is also valuable for identifying cost-effective green infrastructure for near-term funding, as other jurisdictions have done. This is one example. Streets with less than 5% shade are identified, so you might want to look at that for Heat Island. Next slide, please. We also have information on surface temperature by census block. Again, that can be overlaid with other GIS data that we have. Next slide. Okay, the next public meeting on March 25th will drill deeper into these findings. The consultants will provide recommendations for audience discussion, then go into breakout groups, and participants will have ample time to ask specific questions about their neighborhoods. This is all sponsored by the Arlington County Civic Federation and inspired and motivated by the Arlington Tree Action Group. So we hope you'll join us on the 25th. And I've given Rebecca these slides and some more information so that you can follow up and register if you'd like to participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Okay, and then we can turn to our next agenda item, which is a presentation on the Transit Strategic Plan. So I will turn it over to Paul Mounier.
Yes, good evening. Yeah, I'm here to speak to you about the Arlington Strategic Plan. It's a major project that we're working on. Every 6 years, we're required to update this plan, and we are in the midst of that currently. I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly so you have time to ask questions. You can see I talk about some of our service highlights currently, a TSP overview on how it's developed, talk about data, public engagement results, and some of the next steps that we have. You can see some of our service highlights. We have, we're projecting 2.1 million riders this year on ART, recovering to the pre-pandemic of 2.8 million riders in 2019. We have seen steady growth in ridership as we have the pandemic has gone on, and we've come closer to moving out of it. We currently have 78 buses in the fleet, 16 routes, and we have a new operations and maintenance facility that is expected to be completed in 2025. Strategic plans, 10-year roadmap required by the state. Essentially, what it does is it outlines how we plan to provide service over the next 10 years and gives DRPT the opportunity to adjust their budget and understand what kind of funding support that we require from the state. It's also, we want to provide an equitable bus network and remove barriers to transit travel. We come up with ways to track our progress with metrics that talk about operations and service delivery. And it's designed to be flexible. So even though this is a 10-year plan, every year we review the recommendations, ensure that things haven't changed, and determine what the implementation for that year would be on a year-by-year basis, with the TSB being the baseline for what we want to do. Just a high-level overview of how the TSP development works. First, you start very high-level framework, purpose, mission, vision, goals, consider equity issues, guidance, and evaluation of the existing conditions, planning with regional coordination. Arlington, a very important regional area for transit, looking at performance and getting the desire, understanding the desires and needs of the community. Once you have determined that, you need to look at the financial commitment required, operations, infrastructure, fleet, facilities, and then the results are service that meets the needs of the residents, the service standards, and the service metrics that you're going to hold yourself up to determine the success or failure of your proposed network. This is just a graphic view of annual ridership. You can see in 2019, the 2.8 million falling to under 1.5 in 2021, and you see recovery through 2022. We're seeing this recovery continue about on the same trajectory moving forward. This is just another look at the same information that was on the last slide. Just it shows the routes. The large blue box at the bottom is Route 41. It's our most productive and highly used route. And you can see that it has, while declined, it has been still the bulk of our service. We're working on a study to talk about evolving a sustainable fleet. Currently, we are a 100% CNG fleet. We were converted over 20 years ago from diesel to CNG. And currently, there are 2 future pilots that are scheduled for the fleet. Pilots by 4 battery electric buses, and a pilot to buy 2 to 4 hydrogen fuel cell buses. For the study, we gathered information from the public. We had public outreach. We evaluated the current conditions, and then we began an analysis of all the data that we had. A lot of the analysis was done with bivariate analysis on supply and demand, supply of vehicle trips and demand depending on, and there's several variables that we used, and I'll show you an example of that shortly. We also looked at connections from neighborhoods and activity centers to determine where the strongest connections were, where people wanted to travel, and compared that to connections that are made by transit. And as I said, the destinations, transit centers, activity centers, schools, and parks. We bring all this analysis together, essentially overlays of several layers of data to identify areas and neighborhoods that may be undersupplied, and identifying destinations that don't have good connections. And that gives us where the gaps are in our service in terms of areas in the county, and in terms of connections. And also equity is a big part of this.
Paul, if I could just add here that Samia Bird, who's the Deputy County Manager, Chief Race and Equity Officer, is on our internal stakeholder group. And we will be meeting with her to look at the equity lens that the county uses, the equity tool, and work with that in comparison with the Title VI analysis that we have to do that's mandated by the transit industry as well, as we look at the gaps and areas where there may be less service or more service that would be required for underserved populations. Thanks, Paul.
This is an example of one of the layers of analysis we did. Essentially, in areas, as you can see, this is vehicle trips versus projected population growth. We used job growth, existing population. We used equity areas to determine, but this is just one example of it. Essentially, if there is a high amount of population growth that is being shown, and there's a high amount of transit in the area, you would see this dark blue. If it's a high amount of population growth projected and a low amount of transit in the current area, then you would see this red color. And essentially the red, pink, and this violet color indicate areas where there could be opportunity for increasing supply of transit and improving ridership. One thing I will note, this map is population group versus just ART trips. While it is pink down here, there is going to be a lot of population growth, but there is a lot of metro service in this area also. As I said, this is one of several layers, and I see a hand up if
so when you say, right, like there are areas that have a population and maybe a proportionate service by ART, but there are certain areas of the county obviously that are wealthier and therefore are less dependent, and they're less dependent on public transportation. So is that calculated in this, or is it just X number of, I don't know, stops and routes per 1,000 people? Is it based not just on population? Is it also based on like rates of utilization?
Again, this is just one of many layers. So that we've used job growth, we used transit propensity, we used our Title VI equity areas, and this is just an example because really where you get the answers when you lay it over the top. But yes, that's a good question, and it does come out. It does work. So yeah, because you are using a lot of different variables. So we did have an engagement back in the fall. We reached a little over 300 people, or near 400 people, through an online feedback form and 8 pop-ups that we did. I was really happy with the engagement we did with the pop-ups. We met people where they were on the street using transit, and definitely you could see that some of the things, some of the answers, some of the themes in the pop-ups were a little different than what we got from online. And taking together all of the things that we heard and industry trends, looking at our companion other companion agencies, these were kind of the important things that came out on a high level that are kind of system-wide themes that we need to address as we move forward. Frequency of service is always not to be unexpected. Span of service, people looking for more service in middays, evenings. Reliability, if it isn't reliable, people don't want to ride it. Route design and planning, just talking about maybe we need to look at some of the different things we're doing, areas we're covering, and maybe number of bus stops or stops that we don't have. Accuracy of real time, which actually was a little bit surprising to me, but that's why you do the public outreach, is to learn about these things, and it's something that I'm very concerned about, and I absolutely need to believe that needs to be addressed. Looking for better passenger boarding and waiting experiences. This was a theme that went through the infield people, the people we met at the pop-ups, where there was a stronger desire for that than on the online. concern for underserved populations, setting and achieving goals and objectives, fair affordability, reduced fares, free fares, and a bus and roadway infrastructure, looking at ways that we can make the bus perform better, such as dedicated lanes or transit signal priority. So here's the timeline. We started in spring, end of May 2022. September, no, it was October, fall of 2022, we had our first outreach and engagement. Just talked generally, asked people generally about how they use the bus, and presented the goals and mission and vision for the department. We've talked to the Transit Advisory Committee. We have talked to the Transportation Committee, and we are getting ready to release a draft of our service recommendations very soon, which will be coming up in about mid-March. You will see that being released. Then we will have a second round of outreach that will present the service recommendations to the public, to get the response, to see if we have looked at this information, captured the public comment, and are providing the proper network, transit network for residents in Arlington County. Once we complete that, we will take it back. We will look at it. We'll see what we got right, see if we got anything wrong, and then we will need to develop a constrained service plan with a constrained financial plan. Once we do that, we will go back to go to the board to look for approval of the constraint plan and the complete transit strategic plan, and submit that to DRPT in fall of 2023. And the next steps are about mid-March, a little earlier in March, WMATA will be coming out with a better bus network. They're working on a major redesign of the regional bus network. This is important for us because, as I noted earlier, Arlington is an important regional location where we have a lot of service that comes to and passes through Arlington County. With our recommendations, what we want to do is make sure that we are leveraging the regional network and providing services that fill in that regional network, connect people to that high-speed regional network, and serve as much of the county as possible. Again, the public engagement will begin late March, early April, and run through May. Once we are done with the public outreach, we will come back to the constrained service plan and financial plan. That will be advertised. The board will hopefully adopt that, and then we will submit it to DRPT. This says July, but I think we're looking for a little later in the year than July. And that is all I have. So if there are any questions.
Yeah, could you actually start and go back and give us a little bit of an overview of what your goals and objectives were or are?
I don't have them in this presentation. I can. I guess this was a little higher overview than I thought. I can give you some information. I can send along to the committee what the goals and objectives were and kind of the response that we got from the community on those goals and objectives.
That would be useful. Could you give us at least a summary or something, or maybe we can just jump in with some of what our thoughts are with what the goals and objectives might be?
I may be able to pull something up here. Give me one moment.
Yeah. And I mean, from our perspective, we're looking at it is, what are your goals in order to make public transportation and the transit system so attractive that it actually really gets people out of their cars and reduces the vehicle miles traveled. I mean, given the huge amount of greenhouse gases in Arlington that come from transit, that, you know, good public transit is going to have to be a key area of meeting those carbon reduction goals.
I understand. I completely agree, and I apologize. That was an oversight on my part that I did not include that in the presentation. I apologize. Let me 1 second.
If anybody else has other questions they want to pose,
Yeah, by all means.
I'm assuming the answer, but I guess in trying to gauge user experience and what users wanted, there wasn't any questioning of whether users would like to ride on a clean, quiet bus with no tailpipe. I know Arlington's proud of and is always bragging about its so-called clean buses, but was there any sentiment given when during the public outreach to it would be even better to ride in a completely clean bus with making no noise and no emissions?
The discussion on buses really wasn't talked about that much, and there were definitely people, a few people who said that they would like to see electric buses. There were other people that said it's more important to make sure that we have as many buses as possible. So this is focused more on service and not so much the equipment. We are focusing, with the study, it's a service plan. It's not, while we report on the capital plan, that is being determined through another study.
No, I understood it. It is a factor for some people that would improve the user experience, and it'd been nice if that had been factored in some way. Sorry.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, well, you can quote me. I was gonna say, don't quote me. You can quote me. I just may be mistaken. But I vaguely recall that County Board Member Libby Garvey, when she went to Germany a couple years ago on like a fact-finding trip. I don't remember if it was exclusively about clean energy and clean transportation, but I know there was a lot of it that she looked at. I think she had talked about a concept of, and I've seen this technology being piloted in some parts of the country in the last couple of years, about very localized, either automated or not automated, I guess, public transit. So it's not, right, it's not art because it doesn't run these long routes, but it's completely 100% clean energy run, and it's very short, localized within community transportation. And I don't know if that's something that she has spoken with you about. Well, frankly, I don't know. I don't know if you're in a place where she would speak with you, or if she would instead speak with the county manager, who would, speak with Greg Emanuel, who would speak with you. I don't know. But my point being that, is this something, one, that you've heard of through the chain, and two, if so, had you given any consideration or thought to that? And maybe I'm just completely misremembering her saying that, and it was completely someone else. But go ahead. Sorry.
I am not familiar with that discussion specifically. Lynn.
Okay, thank you. So there are two different things I think you're bringing up here, and both are absolutely things that are happening in the transit industry. One is autonomous vehicles, and the second one is what we call microtransit, where you have vehicles that are operating in a particular neighborhood or a certain part of the service area, and it's on demand. And those vehicles are picking people up and taking them to the closest main line for transit. And typically it could be in areas where either rural areas or areas within a service area that has low productivity. And so I would say that the microtransit is something that we're considering. We actually had that included in our TDP a number of years ago. Hadn't planned on starting it until I think 26, 27, something in that area. But that definitely is on the table to look at that. So yes,
Okay,
we
thank you.
have talked about it.
Yeah, I mean,
appreciate. Well, if I appreciate the distinction, and you're right. The importance of what I was asking about wasn't whether it was self-driving; it was that micro transit thing. So thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the other is to what extent that you're looking at the route. Is the information you look at ridership district enough that it can get a good sense of where people are and where they're going, and enough to actually start thinking about how you would plan those micro mobility components, as well as other aspects of basically it's how do you structure a transit system that really makes it easy for everybody to get out of their car and use public transportation for almost all of their needs.
So part of the study that we did is just looking at origin and destination. That was, and there we've got tons of maps where we looked at that kind of information. So all of that is included as we look at how art will look in the future. And so we do have some of that data. It may not be as intricate as we need it to be. At this point, we're trying to look at overall, how can we change the type of service that's on the street right now to meet what is happening literally. And I know you all have heard this, that the true peak service, everybody traveling into an area in the morning and out in the air in the evening has totally changed. And so we've got the peak periods that are longer than have been traditionally, and services that were people for frequency, people want to travel all day. And like you're saying, people want to be able to go anytime they are ready to move and to move around without a car. So we do have some information that will give us an idea on how we can construct the service area.
Yeah, and kind of where people want to go changes during the day, and certainly during the day and evenings and on weekends.
Yeah, right now we have what are called activity centers, Paul mentioned earlier. And so we do know where they are at this point, and we use that as a guide to determine the service that needs to be out there to move people to those particular areas.
Yeah, and are you setting kind of any of these overarching goals of really, I mean, I think the one statistic I hear that's really, or not statistic, but is having a transit system that meets 90% of the needs of 90% of the people, 90% of the time, is kind of that real high level ambitious goal.
We have those ambitious goals too. We have those ambitious goals too. And so we like to say we want to make the service improvement for everyone who lives, work, and plays in Arlington. And so as you can imagine, that's a tall order. But we have to start somewhere.
Are you looking at the schools, especially middle school and high school, now that they're moving to art buses, and seeing as that might be a way of enhancing the art bus system? Because you have kind of a dedicated customer base during different hours of the day, and they have very specific needs as to where they need to go.
We actually have most of our service that travels by a school right now. And so what we're looking at is maybe to line up the times of the service a little bit better with school times. But because we are a public transit service, we have to incorporate what schools are doing. And as you said, they're big generators for usage, but we have to include schools as well. So there may be some areas that we could serve better, but right now we do cover most of the schools.
And I don't know if this is showing on the screen, but here is with the goals that we provided for the public engagement and the responses that we got from them.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a list of documents.
Yeah, you're gonna have to click on that, Paul, to open it up.
Oh, I'm not sharing the right screen. It's not right. Let me share again. So share. Okay. There we go. These were the goals that we presented in the public outreach, and these were the responses that we received. Yes, Eric?
Yeah, Paul, just want to see if I understand this correctly. So you said that this is a 6-year plan, or it's conducted every 6 years, is that correct?
It's a 10-year plan, but it's conducted every 6 years, correct?
A 10-year plan. So given the trajectory that you showed us of consultation and going back to the board, and then this will be finalized and launched in 2024, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so 2024 to 2030, when it will be, is it revised every 6 years, or does it carry on to 2034?
So 2030, it will be revised again. Okay. We do a 10-year horizon and then revise it every 6 years because a lot changes.
Right. So with a 10-year strategic plan beginning in 2024, going out to 2034, I'm just curious how climate change mitigation factors into this strategic plan, given the longevity of the plan.
Go ahead, Lynn.
If I could just jump in real quick. So although it's a 10-year horizon, we go back, it's a fluid plan. So we do go back and look at changes or what changes are happening, either within the service area, if there's new developments, if there's job growth. So we're constantly going back and looking at it. We primarily put the plan together, and it's a state required plan as we look at as the state looks at how much funding will be required to do the types of things that we want. So it is something that we go back and we revisit over the course of the 10-year horizon.
Demetra, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I know that this question has come up a couple of times, and I just wanted to add that transportation is working with the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management on the carbon neutral transportation master plan. And that is, we're around midway through. I was out of town last week, but I did see email traffic going back and forth. So the chairs of both the Energy Committee and C2E2 will shortly be receiving an invitation to either represent or to delegate representation in a working panel for that plan. But I think that the questions you're asking about the decarbonization strategies for the transit are going to be part of that plan.
Well, it's actually very encouraging given the large number of people that create a resilient community through environmental sustainable transportation is really a top priority. So I think that certainly should support, a fairly ambitious transit strategy and broader transportation planning that kind of meets those goals.
Yes, because as you know, and I won't, take up too much time. I know you've got a tough schedule tonight, but, Joan, that will cover not only transit, but it'll cover private vehicles, pass-through traffic, because collectively that accounts for close to 40% of our greenhouse gas inventory, if I recall.
Yeah. And I think, that pass through is kind of important to think of making sure we have, a good, strong relationship with other jurisdictions and WMATA in terms of coordinating across the region, because people just don't travel within Arlington. So, kind of making sure that we've got good bus systems, bus and metro and other transit potential to kind of, again, let people go anywhere they want to go without their car and very conveniently. Does anybody have more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming this evening. It's been informative and we look forward to seeing the draft. When will we see the draft? Is that next month or the month after?
You will see the draft of the service recommendations probably somewhere in mid-March is when they'll be made public, and the final draft of the entire document will be late summer, early fall. And as I said, starting in late March, early April will be another round of public outreach.
Okay.
And we can provide you with the locations. We're having pop-ups. We'll provide you with the links to the online survey, and we will be putting out a virtual public meeting to kick that off.
Okay.
So we'll let you know when that happens.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and actually it would be very useful if we could get maybe one or couple of commissioners who'd want to kind of track this and kind of think about what our kind of response and recommendations would be as they come forward. Because I think, again, and I think they're going to be possibly relooking at the whole master transportation plan. So this could be a big year for transportation, and given that it's 40% of our carbon emissions, it's something that I think we should be paying attention to. So, okay, and continuing on that theme, we will look at the letter that on the EV feasibility study. And so I'll turn it over to John for introductions and we can walk through the letter.
All right. Hi, everyone. And Rebecca, are you going to be able to put the letter up on screen?
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Thanks.
Sure.
So I hope everyone has had a chance to look over the letter. I know we got a number of helpful tweaks and comments. We can just jump into it. I'll leave one opening if someone, because I think the letter itself should serve as an overview of the issue. So, but if someone would like, because the letter's in commission speak, and if someone wants kind of a plain language, 1 minute overview, I'd be happy to give it. But, otherwise I'd say let's jump into the letter, run through it and take questions, as they come.
Maybe start it just if anybody's got some overarching questions.
Yeah. Going once, going twice. And then if not, so questions still open as we go through and at the end, just to make sure we get this right. And I think key issues on the letter, it was challenging. I won't, make any I struggled with it. And the challenges are making a pretty complex issue clear to the board. It's got to be kind of short enough for policymakers. So length is an issue. This is long for us. And does it accurately capture and express the commission's concerns?
Jonathan?
I didn't want to interrupt, John. I just had I had a concern about one wording thing. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do that as we go.
Yeah.
Walk through each paragraph.
Yeah. So I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry.
Okay, let's go ahead and kind of march through the letter.
And I would suggest that people can just unmute and raise a question or ask or make a suggestion as we go through.
In that case, the first bullet, I feel like misleading kind of attributes a malintent as opposed to I'd say an inaccurate or incorrect.
Okay.
Because I feel like misleading almost feels like someone's trying to pull the wool over our eyes deliberately, as opposed to it's just not correct.
Okay.
So and Jonathan,
yeah,
this draft has seen, you know, a dozen just different adjectives, you know,
yeah,
flawed, misleading, incorrect, on and on. But so
the only, and let me just do a counter argument on that then, Jonathan, because that's a very fair summary of these bullets. And I think we want to make a point, we're not trying to point out technical mistakes, but that the overall conclusions that come from this report are so fundamentally flawed, they are going to mislead the county board into an incorrect decision. So I think misleading is much better than inaccurate, and would stick with that language.
We do have a misleading up top as well.
Okay, I guess we don't have to beat the horse twice.
So when you say we have it up top, you mean, right in the sentence before.
Yeah.
I guess when it says the staff created a misleading picture, when you attribute it to the staff, it feels.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of like inaccurate. Inaccurate is more than incorrect. That just would be my preference, but I agree. I think, you know, I do think we want to make sure the tone is such that we don't feel, it doesn't seem like we're strongly attacking.
We can attack the information, but not the people who are delivering.
Yeah.
So long as we're, you know, how to characterize our concerns is important and is kind of an issue throughout the letter. So this isn't a bad place to have that discussion. And I think our concern and my concern is that it's not just that it's a little bit inaccurate, but that the overall impression of this PowerPoint that was given to the board and community was deeply 180 degrees wrong.
Deeply inaccurate.
Yeah. That assumptions on assumptions resulted in very,
well, I think too is you know, as much as we, you know, kind of look at the adjectives, is look at how we're describing how the material was presented, and hopefully if we're clear enough, it speaks for itself, as opposed with us having to, you know, have a lot of these adjectives.
Valuated, right? Like, because I'm fine with either assumptions were outdated or flawed, because I don't feel like either of those are kind of value laden as much as misleading, which to me does feel like it implies a deliberate intent to mislead.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm good with that, unless others, or I think the original was
deeply
false.
Inaccurate.
Yeah.
Deeply flawed.
Deeply flawed. I'm good with that.
and then we'll just have to not stop at every adjective in the whole letter. You know, but.
Understood. It was just kind of that one thing jumped out at me right next to where it said staff.
And I totally get it. And that particular line had already been through a few iterations. And so anyway, all right. So we're at the first bullet, and I think we found a comfort level. We have some changes. I'm okay with them that Jones proposed here.
Yeah.
And Stephen, helpful, thank you. Second bullet. We've linked the guidance. I hope people had a chance to look at it. Seems like the next significant question was at the beginning of the next section, which provides kind of, it's called contextual background, but it really goes over the board guidance, the agreed upon timeline, the decisions that DES has said have to be taken in the next few months as context. And Joan has suggested maybe dropping that, which would save us a whole page. It would really bring the letter back in, into a normal range for one of our letters.
Yeah, I had thought that they kind of lead in, summarize that information without going into too much detail.
Yep. And again, the history of the letter was originally the letter didn't have quite such a the bullets in front, but I
thought that was, personally, I thought that background section was very, very useful. And it sets up sort of the conclusions at the end in a way that I don't know that they would really have the force that they do without that background. So, I mean, you could do a different, different format, but, we're running out of time to get the letter out. And I think we would lose too much to just shorten the letter by getting rid of some of this background.
I will say, I think that part of the problem was when these briefings were given to staff, I don't think anyone discussed the guidance. I don't think it ever came up. Board's very busy, and certainly the commissions, the Transportation Advisory Commission, Transportation Commission, I don't think the people being briefed knew this stuff. So I think
I mean, someone suggested the idea of putting it in an appendix, and so we could have the conclusions further up in the letter, but I think there is value in somehow including it, because then assuming one of us does, or many of us, or any of us go to a meeting where these issues are discussed, we can call attention to them in the document. We can say, look, and page 2, it says this, page 3, and we know this is a long document, but these are major questions.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable if the other commissioners want to leave the detail in there. I mean, it does give some background. I was just thinking that we summarized it maybe well enough in the lead in, and to me, kind of getting at what the real substantive issues are in the analysis. But so I guess okay. We want to quickly run through each paragraph if people quickly read it and have. Okay.
And we didn't get, hopefully people have already had a chance to run through this. So I'd say let's keep moving. And if people want to slow down or back up, we can do that, just raise a hand. I think this next section at the bottom of page 2, when we start raising our substantive concerns, I think we can pause there, and I think that starts a whole new, whole new area. And it's also an area, rich with, does this accurately capture, does it express our concerns accurately? Again, that first bullet, the 2-for-1 bus issue, absolutely central. And I really don't think most viewers understood that was a policy choice imposed by staff, that they think that they judged that we would have a better outcome by buying 2 buses for every CNG bus than we would have by assigning buses, by going to the trouble of, the kind of fleet management aspect of assigning buses to the routes that they can successfully run. So they preferred a rule that every bus has to be able to run every route block, or else it has to be 2 buses.
So it basically means whatever the longest route block drives
Exactly.
how many buses they need.
Exactly. If you have one very long route block, then all buses, every electric bus has to be 2 buses.
Eric?
Yeah, so the first section on contextual background, I said that I think it's essential. I really do. I guess the question for the commission is whether to lead with the issues around process and compliance, specifically with the guidance, or this section, which is right in front of us, which is about the content and the assumptions that are driving the recommendations. I think that's the fundamental question. I believe it's all really valuable. I know this is a bit longer, but all of this is really important information on a critical issue. I think the question is sequencing. So is it about, should we lead with process and compliance, or the assumptions, the flawed assumptions is what we're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kevin?
So I think complaining about process, which happens a lot in the Arlington way and by commissions, sometimes sounds just like whining. And so I think it's really, really flawed here, and we have to complain about it. But I think leading off with process is problematic. Conversely, I do think it's very, very important that we lead off with, there was very clear guidance from the county board, and staff did not follow that guidance. Should very much be the initial pitch, and we ought to start with that, because I do think that will get the county board's attention. And I do think it does call into question really the sum of the whole analysis, because that fundamental guidance did not seem to inform the analysis at all.
I'll just respond. I think you're both raising an important issue, and that the letter evolved. So until it didn't have that substantial lead in with the bullets until the end. And once it has that, I think it's possible to go in either order. I think as it was first drafted, you had to have the background in order to have, understand the page or so that we have on the substantive concerns. So let's see. But
yeah, I might kind of leaned on the substantive thing, because that's.
Would that address your concern, Joan, a little bit, so that if we lead with the substantive concern issues, and then I'm just trying to look and see if it creates drafting difficulties, but it may be that they can simply be flipped.
Yeah. Well, we have the lead in, and then if we just say substantive concerns and then maybe just instead of contextual background, or we can change that leading.
That subheading. So,
Okay. Just a question, is Kevin thought we should go with the contextual stuff first?
I frankly thought it hung together just fine and was okay with not trying to rework it, but I also don't have any problems with these points.
Okay,
Trying to
so
change the order.
So people are comfortable with flipping the order?
Flipping the order, if I heard Kevin correctly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kevin, really lead with compliance, not process. Okay, everyone complains about process or being followed or not followed. So lead with compliance and essentially failure to comply with the county board's specific guidance, and then move into the substance. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, I think the fact that we let off with that was very strong, and we should leave that in place. The other process complaints, I think you can push back.
Okay, yep.
So
okay. So
I may miss the last point. Are we, so what was the last thing you said? I'm sorry, Kevin. What needs to be left in place?
What I would definitely leave in, we have the one bullet that starts out, the guidance said go EV, and you didn't go EV. That bullet, I think, the county board guidance is where we should start with that point.
Well, let's see what the lead-in says again. I think do we capture that enough there on the bullets that we have in the first paragraph? You back up a little bit.
Well, there's a sentence there. It's the second half of bullet that just mentions the guidance.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's not much. I think so. People, it's a close call. Do you think should we leave it the way it is? If we in the middle of this try and push things around, it gets complicated.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we could highlight this is contrary to the specific county board guidance. I mean, we could just highlight that or underline it or something. I don't know. Italics there. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Well, the first bullet there is the flawed picture, which then is, if we kind of structure it based on what the bullets are.
All right. So you're saying, I'm sorry, you're saying let's go back to flipping it, flipping the.
Yeah, it kind of fits with the structure that we've laid out in that first paragraph.
And Kevin was saying that he felt like that first part about the number one under contextual background was important to keep high up.
Yeah. Again,
I think we've either got to flip it completely or.
Yeah, I mean, we either flip it completely because it does flow. Again.
I'm sorry, are you suggesting flipping the second bullet in the intro to make it the first bullet? Is that?
No, we're talking about taking the whole section on contextual background and flipping it with the section on our substantive concerns with the briefing.
I see what you're saying.
I think that was going back to your point of focusing on the substance first.
Yes, and I did agree with Kevin. I just got confused about the flipping. What were we flipping where? Now I'm clear.
So Rebecca, before you actually do that, I would say the last paragraph in the section on our substantive concerns. No. Never mind. It's the last paragraph in the section on substantive concerns is really about our support for the art bus system and for its role, and that needs to stay where it is.
Should I make the switch? Are we flipping?
Can we roll through it first, because once you make that switch, it becomes all colored. And
yeah, let's go ahead and do the corrections on this section, and then we'll do a final.
Okay, so I'll start at the substance of staff briefings.
Okay. So we'll keep rolling. We do have some comments that Joan has made.
Again, mostly just trying to cut or shorten slightly, but.
Well, I also.
And whether or not we're just being
pattern
too
there
repetitive.
That I do want to check with people on, and that is as a commission, do we find that those assumptions were unreasonable, which is the wording that is there now, or is it better to use, more softer language, inconsistent with bus battery trends in the one case and unnecessarily constraining in the other? In other words, do we want to be more blunt, or do we want to be more kind of indirect?
Contrary. I mean, it'd be contradicting. I'd say not just inconsistent. I'd say a little bit stronger. I mean, it directly contradicts.
I'll say that I was comfortable with saying those assumptions were reasonable. But if we have to have consensus, and I already see at least that Joan prefers softer language. I'm personally okay either way. And my one request is that we reconsider at the very end of that section a summation that says that's as direct as we as a commission want to be. And I think, and Joan has suggested deleting it, and I think it's important to point out that these assumptions all build on one another. They compound. They have a compounding effect. You take a unreasonably small battery size that was standard in 2020 and is already outdated. You make that the choice for out to 2038. I mean, you got to understand what they've done, and then you make this 2-to-1 rule that if your bus battery isn't strong enough to do all the routes, then you have to have a double-sized fleet, and they build on each other. So I felt like that summation was helpful, and it's the one place where I'd like to be somewhat direct.
Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree completely with John's comments. I think we got to put that in there. I think that fairly sums up what all the errors in the analysis resulted in.
I mean, if people are comfortable with that, I'm fine.
I don't know, we could put in this graph that I found. I mean, battery I mean, I mean, we can look at Lazard, we can look at Bloomberg, we can look at Department of Energy. I mean,
I would just
yeah,
be more direct. You know, something like unnecessarily constraining is that's not terminology I would use if I were reviewing someone's data and analysis and I thought that their assumptions were flawed, which this is a fundamentally flawed assumption. I wouldn't say that it's unnecessarily constraining. I think that's just a little too charitable.
It contravenes all professional expertise in the sector.
So, yeah.
Kevin? Yep.
I like the way it was phrased, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to argue every point, but.
Okay, well, I mean, if everybody's comfortable with unreasonable, I can go with that, kind of softening it and trying to focus on the actions or, you know, the results.
So we're really dealing with two issues here. One is the last bullet, unnecessarily constraining, and the other is the summation at the end, the two lines.
Yeah, I'm hearing that people want to keep those final sentence, so that's fine.
Okay.
I don't want to belabor this, but I think I made this a comment previously, John. Unreasonable, it can be very subjective. Jonathan and I can disagree on what we think is reasonable, but there are facts, and there are technological. We can look both at past as well as technological roadmaps. Those are based on facts, so it's not whether Jonathan thinks it's unreasonable or I think it's unreasonable. It's flawed.
It contravenes industry consensus.
The reason I think this is important is because if you know, we can't expect board members.
Can we just say contrary to industry trends?
Directly.
Is that really what we're?
Can I ask a question here when we say contrary to industry trends? I thought part of the message here was also other governments are moving forward along the lines that we end up recommending. It was a little bit more than industry. I think both of those points are very important to emphasize, because I think some folks on this are logically looking sideways about what other governments are doing, as well as knowing what the industry is doing in a sense.
Although I think on the battery, it's pretty much a technical thing of, you know, everybody's working with the same battery sizes, but they're making different assumptions in terms of what to expect.
Right. But I just think there are times when as I was reading this, I was having a hard time saying, what are we comparing ourselves to? Are we comparing ourselves just to how quickly the industry is moving? Sometimes that is very clear and specific. Other times we seem to be comparing ourselves to other governments.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. You've got the technology, and we know what the trends are, and then you've got how different jurisdictions are actually dealing with some of the constraints in terms of range and that resulting from battery buses and battery size.
Right.
So we're I don't think directly contrary to industry trends.
I'd say industry consensus or experts, industry experts, industry consensus.
We're describing an assumption.
But let me see if I can find U.S. Department of Energy projection, because I mean,
I don't know that we want to get into throwing charts or graphs or, I mean, it's
no, I know, but we can just say U.S. Department of Energy projections. We don't have to show a chart, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not. It on its face, it's just not. it's not reasonable to assume that battery technology that in this case debuted in 2020 is going to be our top choice through 2038.
Right.
Logic? The human logic?
I mean, if people are comfortable with contrary to industry trends, I dropped it directly. I don't know that that's necessary.
I'm actually okay with that because they are trying to make a point, which they make inaccurately, that they're modeling based upon what's available in the industry, but what they modeled on is the obsolete state of the industry rather than the current state of the industry.
It's, yeah, I think it understates it because in fact, it's already outdated. It's not a trend issue. It's, it, you know, the model that uses that battery no longer uses it, and Alexandria no longer uses it, no longer orders it. It's, so I think it understates it, but if that's, I don't think we should spend much longer on this. I would prefer to say it's an unreasonable assumption at least, but anyway. So, contrary to industry trends, if
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
that's fine.
All right.
And just put back in the sentence I deleted.
That would be great.
Okay. So then it's a question of, are we comfortable moving this section up and ahead of the contextual background to directly address the substantive first?
Joan?
Yeah.
I think you were in favor of moving the recommendations up front.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Just
asking.
give a quick rationale?
Oh, hold it. We're talking about the recommendations. We're talking about flipping.
Not the recommendations, the substantive
Right.
elements do the substantive and then come back to the contextual background. It actually does kind of follow the bullets that we put in the lead in. But I mean, if people are comfortable with doing the context first, I'm good on that too. I mean, it's not that critical, but I think our strong point is that, you know, all of this, that everything that the county board's been told and all the other committees and commissions is just flawed.
So I'm fine with that. I think I heard a few commenters say they prefer it that way, and I see the rationale. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do it.
To be clear, we're keeping this in this spot, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So
As the last paragraph before we go to recommendations.
Okay. So let me go back and delete. So this will be the new flow, and I'll just go slowly.
Okay, and you can delete my comment.
Kudos to you, Rebecca, for being able to do all this on the fly. It looks
No problem.
so. Last, at least as far as the letter goes, last is the recommendations. Didn't get any comments on these, so I would say speak now. I think each of them is fairly important.
Okay, everybody good with that?
Yeah.
And should we quickly go through the appendix?
Can I ask one quick question about the third recommendation? I mean, frankly, I would love to have, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but just say, yeah, the PowerPoint, have a staff response being, yeah, the PowerPoint's flawed. We're not going to try to defend it. We need to do something better. So do we really want them to defend it, or do we want them to either withdraw, basically say it's wrong, or beef it up? Because this asks them to beef it up. I mean, if they're going to use it, they got to back it up. I just think it's better to say, look, this is wrong.
So I may have been a little distracted there by the comments, but the idea is they've gone around the county and made claims, made very fairly specific claims about battery technology, battery buses, and it's reasonable to ask them to provide support for that at the very least. We have already said we have concerns with the assumptions, et cetera, but it's reasonable for the board to say, hey, you said all these things to us, where, show your work.
We could add,
If they're gonna
comma,
continue
we
to
don't
use the
believe there
PowerPoint,
is
then
any.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, John, even better would be to say, we've looked at this again and we agree with C2E2. We provided a flawed analysis. We actually have to redo analysis with one-to-one bus replacement, or, I mean, I don't think that's gonna happen. And I agree that if the staff recommendation is going to continue to stand by the recommendations embodied in that PowerPoint, then they need to do their homework, which they have not done. And I don't think they can do. But even better would be, and I think maybe we requested here is either, I don't want to have to say, okay, we're wrong, but basically change the conclusions in the PowerPoint or back them up.
Yeah, or withdraw them. I mean, if they really did decide that they were in error, then they should let folks know. Yeah. I think I see your point.
So maybe we can just stick in some additional language which says either withdraw the withdraw the conclusions in the PowerPoint or provide all the backup specified.
Well, could I just ask you a question? Would it be better to suggest they revise their analysis in light of the comments?
Revise or amend, I think, yeah.
As opposed to withdraw. Withdraw sounds like,
yeah,
we won, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds that's better.
But to Mark, if I could just follow on from your comment, we haven't actually seen the analysis. So revising the analysis, I haven't seen any.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could say, or consider amending it in light of the comments here.
They could revise the conclusions and the recommendations in the
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
revise the conclusions or amend.
Because there is no
amend the-
analysis, I agree.
Yeah. I just think withdrawing is kind of, you know, if they have an analysis, what are they withdrawing?
Yeah,
They're
I'm
withdrawing
not.
the conclusions, you know, that becomes kind of a bit debater's point that may not.
Well, we may be getting into kind of comments that ought to be directed toward staff. So I'm trying to see how this flows through the board. So our recommendation to the board is essentially to ask staff to reconsider the claims made in the PowerPoint.
Could be that.
And you know, provide them with an opportunity to but yeah, I mean,
isn't the
We can say
PowerPoint
provide
where-
all this information or revise the report, or revise the PowerPoint?
But let me ask this question. Do we consider this PowerPoint to be the report?
No.
I thought our point early on was, you haven't done a report. You've done a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I think you want to keep to that theme, to say, what we need is the report.
Well, and that's also what staff is saying. They're just saying it'll take a few months.
Yeah. And the report has to justify any of these statements or note that that doesn't hold true.
Right. So we want the actual report, and we want it to reflect a consideration of these comments and an explanation of the rationale for their recommendations.
Well, I think that's
What do we want?
So is it, as it stands right now, that what we're saying we want is, you know, adherence to the deal that we all, you know, that this commission and county staff and especially the board struck in 2021, and an assurance that at least one of the options given the board is a transition plan that maintains a 1-to-1 replacement ratio. And then third is, yeah, I mean, I still think it's reasonable to ask for information to support what the.
Can we articulate that we don't think there is evidence to support? I mean, the board should ask them to provide the evidence to support the conclusions that appear in the preliminary results of their analysis. We do not believe that the evidence supports their conclusions. And so if that's the case, maybe that's rehashing the same thing as above.
I think it is. I mean, in street language, what we are saying, put up or shut up, right? You made these claims, haven't provided the underlying data or support. So, you know, it just seems reasonable for the board to say, you told us these things, now, you know, support it or tell us. It's implicit that if staff changes its mind, that they would reply and say that.
No, I raised the point, John. I think you're right. This is a polite way to say put up or shut up, and maybe just leaving it like that's the best way to handle it. So John got me persuaded, even though I raised the point in the first place.
And Demetra raised a point about it's two consultancies that have done the bulk of it, and maybe we should reference them. I mean, like I don't do the degree to which, you know, any of this was written or approved or whatever by the staff, but maybe we should just mention the analysis was done by the consultants rather than isn't it just the staff? I don't know.
That is referenced.
Is that picking? Is that
It's referenced.
okay?
Yeah.
All right.
It's
That's-
referenced at the same time. I think assumptions were chosen by staff. I think
Okay.
that's the way these things usually work.
Okay, no, you're right. Okay. I missed that. Okay.
Do we want to quickly go over the fact sheet?
Sure.
Could you bring that up, Rebecca?
Thank you for the letter, John. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone for your patience and for help on the front end in pulling this together. It's a
John going out with a big bang.
tough area. So the fact sheet, it's 2 pages. I'll be very blunt and say I'm pretty happy with the first page. I think the second page, I think that chart is a very good starting point. I'm not sure that it is fully baked yet. I think I would be happier with page 1. And I'd like to discuss page 2 as to whether it how useful it is, how where it stands.
So John, could I ask you a question here? When I read this, I couldn't tell how this piece was going to relate to the letter, or is this a completely separate?
It'll be an attachment.
Well, this is where I started losing the message here. We did spend a lot of time on this issue of the fuel cell versus BEB in the discussion, and people made some great points in the meeting about you're making some assumptions here that don't hang together. But I had a hard time seeing how this was going to be used to help support the themes of the letter that we've just been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I didn't see it. And sometimes when I looked at this effort to be very fair and balanced in the sort of, as you look at the 2 options, to me, there's an implicit message that, gee, this is complicated. There are some pros and cons. Maybe there is a good argument to sit back and take more time to think about this. Where the message in the letter is, hey, need to move forward. You had the guidance. The analysis isn't telling you you need to move away from that. And I think this could end up kind of confusing the message in the letter.
Yeah, I mean, one of the thoughts is that, that staff has been saying, well, we just have to wait and hydrogen buses will be coming along.
Right.
But if we want to just keep it to the battery buses and not address the hydrogen component.
I agree with you. I may be missing something here, but I found this is harder to fit together with the letter.
Yeah, I mean, we could just leave with some of these zero emission bus fact sheet, bus information and some resources and drop the table. Because that.
Well, if I understand Mark's position, and well, actually, hear from Kevin, but Mark is saying, questioning the need for either page 1 or page 2, and I think we should consider his view. I think, but hear from Kevin first.
I agree. The second page sort of because we actually in the lead up to it, the back and forth was we're not even going to address fuel cell in the letter. We just concentrated on the battery electric buses. That was during the drafting process. That was part of the exchange, and then we have this one stray sheet which kind of addresses why fuel cells are kind of a red herring. We're going off, which is implicit when you look at it, but we don't tie that to the letter. So I agree, it's kind of a straight point. So I would drop the second page. I would keep the first page because the first page shows homework, which does support. We don't put footnotes in the letter, but the first page is a lot of the homework for the conclusions in the letter. Like if you go click on all these, you'll see that the industry trends show the battery costs are dropping, as opposed to it's okay to assume we got to buy a small battery. So I think even though it's not tied together like a law review article with footnotes, I think the fact sheet's a nice addition.
Okay.
So would you use it as an example to say, we think you need more analysis of the industry trends, for example, and see if attached fact sheet as an example of what that will show?
I would just leave implicit that we attached a piece of paper showing we've done a lot of homework here, without even trying to make that point. Like I say, by trying to do a footnote or anything. So, but that's just my gut reaction. I'm okay with it without any.
I think we're kind of leaning to just using the first page and dropping the second.
Yeah.
And let's change the title, then change the title to EV bus fact sheet.
Or could any of these be worked into the letter and dropped?
I don't know.
I think it's hard to work more than a couple of them in. I would change the title to battery electric bus fact sheet, because a hydrogen bus is also an electric bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. Anybody have any other comments? Get a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and we got that done. Great, we're gonna probably have to run over because we still got another letter. And if want to do at least a quick discussion on the budget and then look at the stormwater utility letter. So Dimitri, you want to give an overview of terms of the budget in respect to our issues?
Joan, if you just briefly review them for me, because I was out of town and got back much later last night due to the wonderful air transportation system.
Yeah.
Anticipated.
Well, I mean, there's very little information that's actually in the budget that's laid out that gives us a sense of what's being spent. As far as some of the key issues that I've seen is they've gotten rid of the second position that they created last year in the
okay.
new
I
office.
thought you were talking about stormwater. You're talking about the second position in the county manager's office?
I'm talking about the FY24 budget and what the environmental aspects of that are, because, and just to see if you had anything to let us know in more detail.
Very quickly. So for stormwater, we put in a large number of, requests. We knew that we weren't going to get all of them, but we had prioritized them. The manager's budget recommends the addition of a full-time FTE for site plan review. That is something that, staff certainly has been desperately needing since before I got here. And certainly I've been bringing it up for 4 out of the 5 years that I've been here. The members of the Nuclear Committee on the Civic Federation for the Stormwater Nuclear Committee, in their first resolution, I believe that was issued in February of 2020, was very detailed and identified it as a critical need of stormwater. So that is there. There are a couple of other additional positions that are obviously being added as necessity to run the stormwater utility. Not to run it, but to support it. So outside of that, and we do have additional maintenance needs for the system that have been kind of deferred for a while. So that was added. So stormwater, to be honest with you, is reasonably, pleased. We really needed that site plan reviewer, and everything else I think is moving well with that. We're on track to meet the second as well as the third MS4 permit with the CIP that we currently have. And we're also, right at this minute, somewhat successful in getting grants for stormwater. So I think that, all of that is very exciting. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex with air because there's so many different pots that are considered, part of the CEP support money. And AIR's budget only reflects one. When you get to the position that was cut, I believe that you're referring to the management analyst to support the county manager's climate policy officer. Again, Joan, I knew nothing about that until I saw the draft budget. It was never discussed.
Yeah.
In fact, so far, actually, nothing has been discussed about that office with our office. So, or at least with me. So I think if you've got a question about that position, I'm not punting. I'm just telling you that I know nothing about it. So I think it has to be directed to the county manager.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of letting people know, but if what you know about in terms of the air budget and, is it the same as last year? Is it less? What's happening in relation to the $1 million that was set up?
There was an additional $200,000 that was added to the air budget in anticipation of the federal grant applications. There are several that we're earmarking and following, and the NOFAs and the guidance manuals are starting to roll off the presses in March. So that was added. I requested and got that. And then as far as the county, the CEP Action Fund is technically in the county manager's reserve budget. So we've been going back and forth, and there is funding in there for public access, public use, EVSE, electric vehicle charging infrastructure on public sites, government sites. There's a certain additional fund that's not all the fund, but it's a supplemental fund for energy performance upgrades to government facilities. There is funding for the community choice aggregation feasibility study. Now, I just want to note that we appear to have gone back to square one with the city of Alexandria, because everybody there is basically telling us they know nothing about it. So we may have to just go forward on our own and do an independent study while we're talking to jurisdictions about their potential interest in joining us in a community choice aggregation entity or agency, should that be feasible in the Commonwealth.
So what's happening with the $1 million? And I haven't seen anything that's actually even articulating either what's been happening with the $1 million or what's expected to be expended for next year in any kind of dollar amounts.
And I put in several versions and several proposals for that fund, Joan. And to be honest with you, I'm waiting for a final approval from the county manager, Greg and Mike.
Okay. All right. But that was a one-time fund, and you don't have any idea whether or not it's going to be an additional funding allocated?
I do not.
Okay.
I mean, at this point, and it's not to say that, obviously we would like to have continued funding. You know, we do have to start looking at the community facing part of the
Mhm.
CEP. And the other 96% of the greenhouse gas inventory. But I'm just trying to obviously get to the first part of it. That first $1 million.
Yeah, well, some of that hopefully could be used to start some of that effort. And you had some good ideas that you briefed us in December, so.
Yes.
Anyway, generally my impression has been in the budget is it's a step back from what was promised last year. I mean, we've got the new position who's been hired, will start in next month, early part of the month. But other than that, they've walked back one position and as yet haven't even spent the money that was allocated for CEP implementation. Nor does the budget and, you know, articulate a whole lot of details. I mean, at least last year, they devoted some of the managers' opening statements. Now, I will be at the work session and probably getting more information, but not so sure about how much. It seems like we talked about it a lot last year, so they talked about it as being a priority, and now they're backtracking some. But that's kind of my sense. Eric?
Yeah, I was just, I'm going to expose my ignorance. Is that $1 million at any risk, or does it just keep rolling on until
Don't
it
know.
gets spent?
It just disappear at the end of the budget year.
No, it rolls over.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it definitely rolls over. So, Joan, what I told you just now is my understanding of the recent iteration above us. You know, we obviously submit things and, you know, they get massaged at levels above us.
Yeah.
So that includes the additional supplemental fund for the government facility, you know, energy performance upgrades, the public access, public use EVSE. There's extensive planning for that, I might add, in design for the rest of fiscal year 23 and construction in fiscal year 24. We're looking at the first two sites, obviously, are Bozeman and the Central Library, and Stephen Burr and Adam Calway have worked together. Adam's over at Facilities, have worked together to identify a potential 6 to 7 additional sites. And we just have to go in and do the surveys, et cetera, to find out what those sites can hold and what they would require. Because in a lot of these sites, using Bozeman as an example, there's just no electric current that runs into that parking lot. So we're going to have to draw the current out. We're also in contact and having, you know, lengthy discussions for the past few months with Dominion on their EVSE program. And they have two kinds, one that, you know, the government in this case would own and they would operate, and then one where they own and operate it. Both are very intriguing and, you know, of keen interest to us. Because from our point of view, to be quite honest with you, you know, if you think about it, the EVSE network is just an extension of the grid. And the chargers are basically like a meter. So we find this to be, you know, there's a role and a place for government to lead by example in its own charging infrastructure and to utilize as many public spaces as possible to help drive that behavioral change and that market transformation. But we're excited about the, you know, deep dive and the involvement or engagement of the power utility here, because this is something that basically is a major part of their system.
Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to, on Dimitri's last point about government leading by example and making use of public spaces, I would just point out that for the last 6 months, the formerly publicly available charge point charging stations in the county building have been walled off because they were one out of order, and now something else, and it maybe And maybe the developer may have put those in the first place, but if the county has any leverage over that space, it's a very nice amenity that ought to go back to being available to the public. Because I don't know why, but nobody can plug up there. It's not like it's reserved for some tenants.
That is something that we have to, obviously, we don't own that building, Kevin, and I'm not blaming the owner of the building. I'm just saying that it may be, which is why we really focused on Bozeman first. And those chargers will be in the outside flat public parking lot. So there's going to be really open, easy 24/7 access
Right,
to
right.
those
And
chargers.
I think that's great. I just know it is access to the county building that's pretty high profile. It's the first thing you see when you pull in that garage. And it used to be publicly available. So it's worth, I think, the county at least inquiring, why is that no longer publicly available? What happened?
Okay, noted, and I will follow up on that. There is something that nobody's raised, and I'm going to raise it here just to, get ahead of the punch. It's another part of the utility program that is appealing to us. They have, for example, existing contracts with two main charge vendors, including ChargePoint. They both include what they call premium enhanced maintenance service agreements that, according to Dominion, they're telling us that they're very happy with. Now, maybe that's because when Dominion, enters into an agreement with a ChargePoint, it's not like our government where we're saying, hi, we want 20 chargers at a time and things. They're talking about an entire service territory that covers 2 states. So maybe for a customer of that level, they're willing to do the extra because, Kevin, honestly, the 4 chargers that we installed 8 months ago at the Aquatic Center, 3 out of the 4 are broken.
Yeah.
And there have been a million calls to ChargePoint. They're not operating. And it's kind of like, we always get, well, we've got you on the list. You're going to have to wait, 4 months. There's always an excuse. They have high turnover, at least in the department that we get to call. And there's no continuity to it. So when you are owning something, but you're having to rely on third parties to maintain it, it's a real problem. And it's not just with us, because I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago with several jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, and they were all saying the same thing, including Fairfax.
I hear you. I've got a better example. U.S. Department of Transportation has 4 ChargePoint stations right adjacent to the building. They've been out of service for about 2 years. And ChargePoint won't fix them. So you can't get any more high profile than that. You ought to have more leverage from DOT than anybody else. So it is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of getting back to the budget in general, the next is there will be a number of work sessions, but we need to be thinking as a commission in terms of what the position is. Right now I'm actually just not seeing anything that really indicates what they're doing to advance CEP implementation on certainly the number of fronts that we raised last year in our budget. So I think,
I just do want to mention the infographic on, the county and the team's performance under the first 2 years of the roadmap. And the first 2 years, if people really looked at that, you could see, we didn't shy away from a challenge in that first 2 years. That infographic was just chock full and loaded. And there's an infographic that I believe and a further additional document that gives you greater detail than the infographic, should you want greater detail. And I think Rebecca, did those get out? And maybe they didn't get out till today.
Yeah. So we'll incorporate that in.
Those were distributed last week, I think on Thursday or Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're scheduled in 2023. Things are done or they are literally in active process right now, and 95% of the first 2 years will be achieved. I don't know, Joan, I can't recall off the top of my head whether there were comments and recommendations made by C2E2 in the budget last year that maybe weren't included in the roadmap. But I
Well, I
encourage
think,
everybody to
yeah.
look at that.
I mean, we did, mention that, needed more outward facing
Yep.
activities, especially low and medium income. And I believe the budget was passed even before the IRA was passed, which makes, having this type of program even more essential because there's money on the table. But I think also, there was a lot of discussion about making sure and being transparent about this is spending on facilities and whether they were upgrading to electrify buildings as well as improve energy efficiency. And that's still kind of a black hole for us of knowing what's being done. I mean, we don't even have the transparency yet in terms of what facilities would need to be shifted from gas to electric.
And, Joan, I think that that's something that the Energy Committee and C2E2 can work very closely with Steve Burr over the next year because the decarbonization tool is now live and active as of January. So he'll be using that in connection with government facilities.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure, is everybody aware that the DES work session for the budget is Wednesday, the 7th?
Yes.
Of March? Okay.
Yeah, I will be there. It's from 3 to 5. Encourage anybody to watch. And if I can, it'd be nice to have, certainly want input from everybody, but if you can get assistance to help write the letter that we will be sending to the board, and we'll approve that at our next meeting. So let me know if you want to kind of help. So let's turn to the stormwater utility letter. Stephen, you want to walk us through it? Rebecca, you want to pull it up?
Will do.
Yeah. So for the past, God, I don't know how many months, there have been meetings held about the stormwater utility. The idea is that you pay into the stormwater utility in order to deal with stormwater runoff based on the amount of impervious surface area that you have in your property. This will be measured by GIS satellite data. I was in favor of this, and I think we should be in favor of this. It can be distributed equitably. We were just more adding to it, and that there could be more done to encourage people to reduce their impervious surface area and to do good things for their environment, such as planting trees and expanding tree canopy. So some of the things that we was working with Joan and talking about delineating the 3 to 5 tiers, which was a reference to the ways that the stormwater utility kind of lays out how much you pay based on your impervious surface area. Also, working on creating some kind of a credit to encourage the creation of tree canopy, which is a great way of reducing stormwater runoff. And it's also a way actually to make sure that the stormwater that runs off is cleaner. And also working on, and I'm sorry, I need to pull this up. The name of the program was an Arlingtonian program that was discontinued after the pandemic. That could help lower income individuals get assistance in making changes to their property so that they can reduce their impervious surface area. So again, it wasn't really a large pushback that we were asking for, but just more can be done on this.
Yeah. Michaela.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, Michaela.
I guess the only comment I had, I agree and generally support the letter. The only comment I had was, if you scroll down to the Stormwater Wise program, I guess I would change that instead of only supporting low income, I would have it apply to everybody.
Mhm.
Maybe you could pay on a sliding scale according to income.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know, one of the advantages of that is, I mean, people like to get, you know, kind of financial help, but also they get so much support and assistance that even if they just get a little bit of money,
Right. Demetra?
maybe prorated for low income
Has her hand up.
residents.
Yeah, we don't have to get into this. I just want to note that Virginia law for the establishment and, implementation of stormwater utilities is really restrictive, and it's restrictive in ways that we didn't anticipate. So it doesn't allow us to, believe it or not, set up any separate low-income assistance or support programs. It makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to revive the Stormwater Wise program.
Even if it
So
were
a
like
program
separate?
like that, I'm not saying that the program like that cannot happen. It just needs to be funded out of the general fund, not
Yeah.
out of the revenue from the stormwater utility.
Mhm. But that,
Yeah.
since that goes into meeting our Chesapeake Bay ordinance requirements as well, it's just, you know, how they can do it financially and legally. You know,
Yeah.
it
It's
makes sense.
really,
It's kind of crazy that that kind of structure or that kind of mechanism isn't set up to actually help people reduce their stormwater.
They don't do anything. And even the grant program that, for example, Alexandria has under their stormwater utility, that grant program is funded out of their general fund.
Yeah, well, and we
Because
were
they weren't
funding,
able, yeah.
and we did the same thing. So, I mean, we don't have to quibble and we can let the county staff figure out. But, you know, just to make the point that these programs are important to residents.
And
So-
it also not only provides an incentive to capture some stormwater, but it adds more native plants onto the landscape.
Yeah.
Supports our biophilic cities.
There are credits for native plantings.
Yeah.
So there are credits in there for that. And we are, Joan, and again, this is for future discussion, but we're working hard and we're looking to update the CPACE program, Rich and I, and then possibly to see if we can't leverage the commercial PACE program as a mechanism for lower income, multifamily, nonprofits, and churches to be able to reduce their impervious.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, you know, just for everybody is that there are a number of different ways to earn credits, including putting in pervious surfaces or conservation landscaping. But, you know, we just wanted to focus specifically on trees since that's such a critical element and, you know, a potential of actually doing that. On that third bullet, maybe having it read to similar to the Stormwater Wise program prioritizing, and then we can say low income affordable housing and nonprofits. And what kind of highlight the nonprofits because churches and others who didn't pay property taxes didn't pay into the stormwater system. So now they're actually going to be having to pay into it. So something that would help them and help the community at the same time.
Our old friend. So this is another example of the Dillon rule.
Which is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, but is the fact that we are restrained so much by Virginia law on this.
On some things, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I have to tell you, California is a Dillon rule state too. 38 of the 50 states are Dillon rule, but the Dillon rule is a whole different animal here in Virginia, I have to say.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think most of what Mark had looks good.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that with Demetra since she's on the line. My recollection is that there are quite a few other jurisdictions
Mhm.
around that have basically utility-based funding.
Yeah. I think throughout Virginia there
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I just wasn't, we weren't sure which ones outside of Alexandria and Fairfax or Falls Church, but so, but
I don't think Fairfax is a utility.
No.
yeah.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think so.
Fairfax is not a utility. I think, Mark, my understanding is that currently 17 of the 19 VAMSA districts are utilities, and the only two that aren't are Fairfax and Arlington County. Fairfax City may be a utility.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we can accept that. Your comment's fine.
Okay.
Anybody
Any other,
have?
sorry,
Good.
any other comments?
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank
Any
you, everyone.
opposed? Pardon?
Sorry, I said thank you, but
Any opposed? Okay, got this one done. Just wanted to raise something if people are interested. Just before the meeting, Michaela had shared a letter that the FNRP had actually sent out on the missing middle. I'd actually decided that I didn't have enough time and there wasn't much interest of delving through all of the permutations that they're proposing. But the FNRP did send a letter that seemed pretty useful, and I think we want to quickly review it. If we want to just send a very short letter that just says we support what they did as follow on.
And
John,
I sent it
find me.
around, but I can also pull it up on my screen, share my screen if that's helpful.
Yeah, why don't you share your screen?
Okay. Let me know if you can see it.
I can see it.
All right. So in summary, I guess the kind of new element for me was in the trees, the suggestion for incorporating trees onto plans for missing middle housing. And here, let me scroll through, get to the end. They're suggesting, instead of saying how many go to which, and a fourplex gets this and a fiveplex gets that, tying it to the lot size. So a larger lot would have more trees. I don't know, Joan, do you want to like read it through or?
Yeah, maybe I just let people read, just kind of scroll through it so people can read through so they know what we're saying. And then again, I mean, if there's any people that feel uncomfortable about doing this, we can just not do it.
Yeah.
But, on the first point on the lot coverage, that was, I think, one of our points that we had made in our original letter.
Right. But I think this would be helpful, because expecting a small lot to plant 8 canopy trees is just might not be realistic.
Right.
Was that slow enough? Did people get a general sense of it, or? Should I go back?
John?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So the CPHD study is something sounds useful. It would be outside of the missing middle process, but certainly
That's right.
something that can be.
Yeah.
And then likewise, the tree planting approach that they're suggesting was not advertised, right? So is it outside the scope and therefore also something that can't be addressed directly by the board in March, but could be taken up separately?
Well, there was a staff presentation that indicated that they could use this. And
Yeah.
I wasn't at that presentation, so. We'd have to reach out to Phil to clarify, Carolyn.
And it,
Yeah, well, and that they are referencing a staff update, so.
I'm a little confused on that front, and the tree planting rules have been, flawed and a little complicated. I agree with them on that.
I think the way they're writing it, it sounds like the RTA may have enough flexibility to be able to consider this approach.
Right, and I suggested things like changing the setback requirement or adding some flexibility to where a property is sited, and they said they had tried that, and there's no indication that that's going forward, so they didn't incorporate that into the letter.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of that probably can be addressed as part of lot size.
I don't know. They seem to think there was no flexibility in where in the siting.
Mm-hmm.
If moving a home closer to the street would allow a large tree to be retained, or vice versa, it would be nice to have the flexibility, but they thought that was going nowhere. So
no,
they wanted to stick with what they thought could be put into effect.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, this is basically what we have to work on. If people are uncomfortable with it, we don't have to do anything. If people pretty much believe, think that what they've written is worth endorsing, that would just be then a short letter from me saying we endorse the letter.
Could I get I'm just trying to understand whether the Chesapeake Bay chart there is the recommendation or it's referred to as a guideline. Is that what it is? Well, I'm not sure. Of course, guideline can be a lot of different things, but in other words, what is the recommendation that would be binding here?
That tree planting numbers are scaled to the size of the lot instead of based on the number of units.
Okay. Because that seems like a very reasonable principle. But I don't know what others care, but
yeah.
some of the specifics here on this chart, I don't know. I guess they could be okay, but.
And also just to be clear, this would apply not just to missing middle, but to all housing in currently single family zoned areas.
Right.
Is that correct?
Think so.
Yeah, it's. Let's see.
Well, isn't the single home requirements 20% of lot coverage?
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
already
so
20.
this actually makes everything, because the thing is the state law says for multi-family units, you only have to have 10%. Which has been one of the issues raised over moving to this.
Well,
Okay, so.
I think if we do write a short letter on this, we just want to confirm that it's within the scope of the RTA and therefore something that the board can actually do.
Right.
Yes, that's my understanding.
But with that, aside from that kind of question, it does seem like a more sensible approach than, the staff proposal, and if it actually applies to single family as well as multifamily, that's more equitable too.
Mhm. Okay, I mean, could just write something C2E2, in addition to, following on from our letter of whatever date, endorses the recent letter sent by the Forestry and Natural Resources plan to, recommending relooking at lot coverage size and also suggestions on tree canopy coverage, to the extent if it fits within the proposed RTA. Does that kind of capture what you were thinking, John?
Yeah, I'd confirm separately from the letter that it's within the scope and if it's outside.
Mhm. Right, yeah, just to highlight in our endorsement is that, if this is within the RTA, we think it's a great idea.
Or we could reach out and just confirm that separately with Phil.
Yeah, let's say confirm it separately and don't write
Okay.
a letter that says we don't know if this is or it isn't, if you can help it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it is, or they wouldn't have done it, but no harm in.
Yeah,
Double
okay,
triple
Michaela,
checking.
you want to quick send a letter to Phil, an
Yeah.
email to Phil, and then we confirm it?
Sure.
Oh, we don't have to have that caveat?
Yes.
And sometimes that commission has sent things, I mean, ideally we confirm it separately, but I'll leave that to you, Joan.
Okay, and I can look at the link too that says, because there's a link there. But if that, kind of gives us the out of the horse's mouth type. Okay, so somebody want to propose a motion?
I will.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So we will just send a letter endorsing that. Okay. Okay, I think we can mostly ready to wrap up. Mark, did you have anything to say about site plans?
I think I said in the email, we need to
Okay.
cover, we have
Yeah.
4 things to cover. The other thing I would just mention, you know, the one that's the VHC one that is technically on our list as being not even active or even preliminary, may beat all the other all the other projects, because it was very clear in the, and I think people saw the summary that Cindy put together, that Christian Dorsey wants to have basically the entire process of SPRC review done by October. So, and so it's not even on the list yet, but it might start moving. So, but we do need some coverage.
Yeah.
We're about
So
to follow. Yeah.
could people please look at that list and kind of see what you have time to volunteer to take on? Anybody new on the process? We've got a number of people that have got a good bit of experience that can help walk through the process on that. Okay.
Although some of the best ones are leaving. Like John.
Okay. Anybody have anything else of importance? You know.
I'll say
John.
goodbye.
Okay.
For real. And just, you know, you guys should never doubt that the hard work you do makes a difference. It absolutely does. And also, I won't be a stranger, so you know, consider me a resource, and let me know how I can help as a
We're expecting you to stay on for the Energy Committee,
Yeah, I'll be there.
so not going too far away. And
Yeah, we're holding you to that,
Serving
John.
with you for a couple years, John.
I'll be around.
Yes, I hope so.
Hey, John, just so you know, at the beginning of meetings, there's a 3-minute public comment period, and you know, might want to consider, you know.
You might see me there, or just hanging out, you know, because of course habit, right?
Right.
John, C2E2 is like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave.
Thank you, John.
That sounds scary.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Stephen, did you have something to say?
Oh, I just want to say goodbye, John. Thank you so much for all your work. You were one of the people who interviewed me when I first came on, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun, and yep. Thanks, everyone. See you around.
Okay.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, all. Thanks
everyone.
everybody.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
good night. Bye now.